There's a guy online, Teacher Man, and I'll call him out. I mean, he he says there's one best way to hit, and he has these coach speak things like this, snap and coil. And
Can you explain why Teacher Man's teaching philosophies work well for hitters like Aaron Judge?
well, I will agree with him on this. If you are trying to teach the best way to swing to the best athletes with elite movement patterns, a lot of the things, not all, I don't agree with all that he says, but a lot of the things that he teaches certainly have had great effect on some great hitters in the major leagues. So I definitely would give him that. But he's teaching something elite. What we are focused on is that what do you do with the youth hitter that loves baseball or works hard, but is having major problems because they're not strong, they're maybe not an elite athlete, but they want to make contact. Welcome to All Things Baseball Podcast. This is episode 38. I'm your host, John and
Johnny.
And we're here for another great episode. We're going to talk about the overlooked youth hitter, right? So the types of hitters that maybe aren't elite, that have a little trouble but love the game and need to get better too. Before we do, we want to mention this past weekend we went to a great place, new place that just opened up called
The Golf Lab. And if you're in Huntsville, if you're a native, if you're local, you're traveling in, definitely check it out. It's a great place that just opened up. And they have 3 golf simulating bays.
Yep, simulators. Very state of the art. So what we loved about it was you could play. We played Augusta, not very well, but we played it. And it records your swing. It gives you all the metrics, it analyzes your swing. AI has an AI mode. It shows you where you hit the ball on the club face
there's
or
different,
not.
Yeah, there's different like modes and things you can play. Like you can use the range, practice your swing.
So check it out.
Yeah.
Kerry and Jason are great. They're just opened up, and I think if you love golf and you want to get better at it, you want to have fun while you're getting better at it, it's a great place to visit.
Yeah, super cool. Definitely check it out.
And then also wanted to mention Little League World Series. Chinese Taipei beat the U.S. team from Las Vegas. Yeah, and they won 7-0. They had a pitcher that was throwing over 80 miles an hour. Not on every pitch, but he reached 82.
Come on.
And he was in the upper 70s from 46 feet. It's really
pumping it.
Yeah. And they were just so fundamentally sound. Actually, I was very impressed with Las Vegas. They just couldn't hang with them.
Yeah.
But they actually put the ball in play against this kid. He didn't strike out that many. He was just too good. And they're just very sound fundamentally, which we'll talk about a little bit today.
Congratulations, Chinese Taipei.
Yes. So now we want to get into what we think. Johnny and I work with, just to give you a little bit of our background, we work with youth hitters, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, little league and middle school age. And so what we find is that there's hitters that, love the game, but maybe they haven't grown yet, or maybe they're little talented, but not elite talented. And they just need a little bit more attention to get maybe out of their head or fix a swing flaw. Right?
Yeah.
So remember back to when you played Little League, right? You remember players that, because you're a teacher now, you're someone that we work with a lot of youth hitters, dozens over the last number of years, dozens each year. I've been doing it for, I don't know how many years, 15 years. You've been coaching and teaching for
9 to 10.
So think about your Little League days and some of the kids that struggled, maybe just got 1 or 2 hits a year, or if that.
Yeah.
What was that like, remembering that, and what do you think you could bring to some of those kids, now?
I think the most important part is building a connection. I think you agree with that, because you need to understand the player and where they're coming from, to understand the flaws and how those flaws were built into the swing. Ingrained into the swing. Your swing is naturally going to have flaws, like as you progress, like
most the humans, like Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle and Barry Bonds.
Natural freak athlete is a little bit different, but it's not as common. So building the connection, identifying the problems in the swing.
Do you remember playing Little League? Do you remember like what practices were like? Everybody'd get how many swings in a game in a practice?
Yeah, you get like 7 to 10 swings in practice. You take like infield, outfield.
hard to get better at as a hitter if you're
Yeah, rarely play scrimmage. It wasn't really enough time because usually practice for 45 minutes to an hour. And then when you get more competitive, you play more like higher up baseball.
yeah
You get more time to work on
yeah
specifically hitting
yes.
um, the things that you need to work on.
So what we noticed is that there are gurus out there that teach, that get the exit velocity, and they're teaching elite movement patterns to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old
Yeah.
kids. And we find that frustrating, right? We
Hmm.
talked about it a lot. Like everybody's like, there's this one best way to hit. There's a guy online, Teacher Man, and I'll call him out. I mean, he he says there's one best way to hit, and he has these coach speak things like this, snap and coil and
Can you explain why Teacher Man's teaching philosophies work well for hitters like Aaron Judge?
well, I will agree with him on this. If you are trying to teach the best way to swing to the best athletes with elite movement patterns, a lot of the things, not all, I don't agree with all that he says, but a lot of the things that he teaches certainly have had great effect on some great hitters in
Right.
the major leagues. So I definitely would give him that. But he's teaching something elite. What we are focused on is that what do you do with the youth hitter that loves baseball or works hard but is having major problems because they're not strong, they're maybe not an elite athlete, but they want to make contact. So
Yeah.
for us,
There's a
we
foundational level that you need to understand
right.
about hitting that not a lot of players understand, and I think that's kind of where we want to direct.
So the gurus will talk about exit velocities and launch angles, and we're about to get into something a little bit deeper. So now we're going to get into the differences between elite hitters and just maybe ordinary hitters or youth hitters that are trying to make contact with the ball. So when we use the word, Johnny mentioned this off camera, when we use the term elite, really to us, an elite hitter, and you look at the best hitters in baseball, they have a combination of power, right? And they make pretty good contact, right? They're getting
Yeah.
total bases. They're getting lots of
Also discipline.
right. They have a great discipline, so it's not just the swing. Um, versus hitters that really don't have much of a chance to hit with power,
Yeah.
but yet they're still trying to hit with power, and that's to me where the flaws come in. Right? Would you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You play outside your hitting ability, um, because I think you have to be as a hitter. You have to be honest. You have to know if I really can get the ball out of the yard or if I can barely get it
Right.
out. There's a difference that
There is a
you
difference.
really should have more of a level line drive to the gaps approach. Like that's like the
Gap to gap.
kind of the most foundational way of looking at things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, again, we mentioned this in the earlier segment. We have a unique perspective because we have been working with youth hitters for so long. And so you tend to see a lot of the youth hitting flaws. You tend to see some things that are similar over and over again. And
Yeah.
then you try to apply different drills to kind of drill out the flaw or help them with maybe overcoming it mentally and things
Mm.
like that. So we don't profess to know the elite swing better than anybody. Like there are gurus out there who know the swing better than us, the best swing. But our contention is knowing the swing and teaching young hitters how to hit the ball is not the same thing.
Yeah.
It's great if you know the swing and you can break it down frame by frame and you give yourself a gold star.
Yeah.
But it's not the same thing.
Yeah. And there's really nothing wrong with not having an elite swing. Um, even when you're in high school or towards like a senior, most people don't even get towards an elite swing. Like me personally, I don't think I ever reached. I think I had flashes of elite, like power and elite approach, like to my hitting towards when I was in college. I think in high school I had like good to great levels of my swing. Like
Tight. The
yeah,
swing gets tight.
your elite swings have to be consistent, really consistent.
Right.
Like you can't just be like a flash in the pan of one thing,
Right.
like power or discipline or a good swing.
And remember, you played some college ball, and so you would be in the upper, few percent of players, youth players that made it to, a pretty high level. So when we're working with young hitters and we see them trying to do things that they really can't, we go back to fundamentals. We go
Mm-hmm.
back to what is it that they're having trouble with? And we try to get them obviously to focus not on exit velocities, which is, I mean, I see so many kids when we show up at the cage, they're just trying to measure how fast they can get that exit velocity up and their how much their power. They talk about power all the time. I don't have enough power. How do I get more power? How do I get? Meanwhile, they're striking out one out
Yeah.
of 3 times, and they're popping up a lot. I see a lot of pop ups, and so we don't like the cookie cutter approach. We like to tailor what it is that youth hitter is having trouble with things that should get them to make more contact consistently.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, I think when you get caught up in the exit velocity and the launch angle, you have to understand that stuff doesn't really happen when you're in the cage or on the field hitting. Like, you're usually training in the weight room or doing specific exercises that allow you to free up your hips, get big, like stronger legs. You really have to use the ground for your approach. That's like one of our big things is,
Right, build a swing from the ground
yeah,
up.
you use all the,
Not the legs up, but the ground up.
yeah, yeah, you get all your power from the ground.
Before we head into the next segment, which is really the non-negotiables, the
Yeah.
fundamentals, tell me some things. This is kind of fun. Tell me some things that are coach speak that hitting instructors will tell hitters, and you know that a 10-year-old has no idea what he's talking about. What would be an example?
Letting the ball travel.
Right, that concept, obviously,
Yeah.
you hear that all the time. Let the ball travel. Think about that. If you're a 10-year-old, how are you letting a
How
ball
far
that's
do you let?
the ball is coming to you from the moment that the pitcher releases it to the moment it gets to the catcher's mitt in less than 1 second.
Yeah.
So what are you telling the hitter? Wait 1/10 of a second more? Like, how are
Yeah.
you letting that ball get deep? It doesn't translate. What does translate would be, for an example, on how we coach or what we teach is load later. Load earlier, load later. You mentioned earlier
Don't
off
change the
camera,
swing.
right? Is when do you start your load? It might be at a certain point when the pitcher is in his motion.
You do change your swing, but you're changing very minimal, but you're still staying level with an upward trajectory to get the line drive swing, and you're letting the ball travel, which, yeah, letting the ball travel, you're finding that point in the swing or in the wind up of a pitcher or the stretch when you can load a little bit later. And
So that's a better cue than saying just a coach speak. Well, let the ball get deep. It's more let's pick a cue to load later or earlier. So
yeah,
so
and that ball needs to be like
right.
on the outer half,
Right.
right, middle to outer half.
So now we're going to talk about the fundamentals of hitting, and which is very different from style.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't understand that you can have all different styles.
Yeah.
We get a lot of coaches and parents that want to teach elbow up, elbow down, hands high, hands low, wide stance, narrow stance. If you look at a major league game, you'll see what?
Many, many different styles. They all start pretty different. Not 1, 2, 3 different players. They're all going to have different ways of how they start, but they generally always end up in the same position before they are ready to launch.
They do. They really do. There's what Coach Tate used to call the strong position, right? Or the pre-launch position or the launch position.
Yeah, kind of how we look at it.
The coach speak again. But like you said, you can start high, start low, and when you start to coil and get ready, when you right before a heel launch and the heel drop, front heel drop, and the launch of the swing, all the great hitters, all the good hitters are really in the same position.
Yeah,
but you can start.
That's
so
the
many
coach
different
speak,
ways.
in which if they don't, you should always ask the player, like when we are working with them, when you're at the point of separation, when you're recoiling, what does that feel for you? Because we always get, like, if your trunk is turning, we don't want that because that can lead to casting out the hands.
Sure.
So we always have to watch for that. But you do need recoil and some pinch in, like right there in that movement.
Right.
We call that the negative.
Right. So fundamentally, that's good. We're going to get to that part in a second. But the first thing to me, first fundamental is that you have to have balance. I mean, we watch a lot of hitters, and everybody can have balance on it with the ball on the tee, in the middle of the tee, right around the belt tie or wherever they like it. Everybody's going to feel like they can hit that ball, and they can. But it's those marginal strikes, the inside strike, the outside strike, the high strike, the low strike, and a combination of those. You know that if you don't have balance before you swing, while you're swinging, after you're swinging, that you can't hit those pitches.
Definitely.
So we see so many hitters, and the first thing we say is you're just not balanced. You're not connected to the ground. You're not using the ground for force and direction.
Yeah, usually it's like the swing is so violent, or you're so out of control with the heel strike and not being able to
maintain.
Yeah, maintain some bounce in your body. Like there is a center of
Well, you
gravity.
lose.
Like
Yeah,
if you draw a line, like if you were batting right down from the top of your head down to the very bottom, there should be a semblance of not being way too far back or way too far forward.
right. So balance is non-negotiable. You have to have a balanced approach. Two, I would say, is head movement. We see a lot of kids that you can move your head when you're loading and coiling and striding. But after that, once your heel strikes and you launch the swing, your head really shouldn't move. If you're riding the front leg, if you're sliding the hips, your head's going to move. So we see a lot of kids and they wonder, why am I swinging and missing? And we film them, record them, and we see that they're sliding their hips, moving their hips, and their head is moving while they're swinging.
Mm-hmm.
So we point that out. We think that's key, and that's often overlooked. It becomes like, oh, well, and usually especially if they're upper body swingers, they're trying to catch up to the fastball. They're going to go after it with their upper body, okay, and not their legs.
Yeah.
And so you get a lot of sliding and a lot of head movement. So head movement is non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
You won't see a lot of great hitters moving their head while they're swinging.
Right.
They might do it occasionally if they're going after, like, say, a slider away or something.
Yeah.
But they're reaching and they flick it out, but that's not great hitting. That's more like fighting something off.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is you have to have some sort of a good path to the ball, right? So some people teach going direct to the ball, down to the ball. You hear even major leaguers say it. iHeart says it. Pujols says it. Going down to the ball. The Trout says it, which I don't understand.
Steep
They're
angle.
very steep with going straight to the ball and then trying to get that backspin. I got to tell you, that does not really work for youth hitters. They have to get on plane early and stay on plane.
I remember hearing a teacher talk about this. When you're going at a steep angle, say this microphone is the baseball. It's a very short amount of time. You have a small window to hit this baseball at this time at the point of contact going down. Because then you do have to get backspin, as you say, to get that ball elevated for a line drive. So you're coming down and coming up to try to get that backspin, right? That's how you get backspin. Because you want the ball moving this direction, clockwise. It's so much easier to get on plane with the baseball. Now, once you're on plane or even close to it, because you're still going to hit a ground ball that way and you're going to hit a pop fly that way. But when you're somewhere in this range of on plane, you now have a much better chance.
Well, yeah, and I would say that's a good analogy. And I would say that if you're on plane early, if you mistime the ball, you can still keep the ball in play. So, for example,
or fight it off, whatever count.
Right. Yeah. If you're on plane with the pitch early and you stay on that plane late, you can keep the ball fair by pulling it or hitting it to the right side. But when you're coming into an attack angle where it's loopy or too steep.
What is an attack angle for the listeners?
So, as you're launching in the swing, the barrel is going to be attacking that baseball, okay, from a certain angle. And if you're very steep, you really have just a very short window where you can meet the ball. If you're very loopy, same thing, a very short window where you can meet the ball. So if you're off time, you have no shot. If you're off time a little bit, but your path is pure, you can still put the ball in play. So I don't want to get too deep in the woods with it, but it's a fundamental is having a good path to the ball where your hands aren't moving away from your body too much. So we'll give hitters cues. Don't get your hands away from, don't separate your upper and lower arm. Don't reach, with your swing, things like that. So good path to the ball. And then another fundamental is the lower body rotational movement. So you mentioned a little bit about the coil and things like that. So you have to have some rotational movement, especially in the lower half that syncs up with the upper half. And if you're just pushing the hands and not using the lower body, you're really not going to be able to improve over time. You might be able to get away with that in Little League or less, pitch.
As we said from earlier, all your momentum and your power comes from the ground up. So if you have no legs to start the swing, you don't have anything.
Right. So other key concepts would be having a good timing mechanism. They're all different types of timing mechanisms. We're not going to get into all of them, but you do have to have the ability to time pitches. So that could look like a step load. That could look like an A-rod load, a knee, a chipper load, toe tap load. All these different things, or even hand triggers where you're timing it with your bat and waggling. So we find that those are kind of the fundamentals of the swing. And then there's so many different styles. You'll have hands that separate a little bit, hands that separate a lot, longer swings, shorter swings. I'm going to tell you, we think it's better to have a short, compact swing for consistent contact.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen some great swings, that are more dominant with the bottom hand, like a Ken Griffey, which is a little bit maybe of a longer swing, but so beautiful. And some people would contest that it's not a long swing. But then you have others that are maybe more top hand dominant. When I was growing up, Mike Schmidt was very top hand dominant. So very different styles. But anyway, fundamentally, you have to have certain things. And we like to point these things out that they're kind of non-negotiable. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the mental side of hitting a little bit. Before we do,
the most important part.
In the fundamentals and in some of the key concepts of hitting, we didn't talk about sequential movements and weight transfer, but we certainly spent a lot of time talking about the progression of movements from, like you mentioned, the ground up, the legs. There's a progression of movements that if you break that sequence, like everybody has gotten to a situation where a fastball got on them fast and they kind of had that emergency swing where they're just trying to hit the ball and
there's nothing into it,
and they skip steps in the sequential movements. We go through that with the young hitters too. But anyway, getting into the confidence, wanted to mention that especially if you're teaching, we know this from seeing dozens of hitters, that if they don't buy into what you're teaching them, and if they lack just zero confidence in their ability, then going over the perfect swing or building the fundamentals not going to mean much if they're up there without any intent and any confidence.
Definitely. Yeah, I think to build confidence, you do have to have a bit of success, something that jumpstarts it. We're hearing Derek Jeter talk about
Respect.
Yeah, got the Jeter jersey on. Talk about building his confidence and how when he struggled, he was able to regain it. Because I think you can go through, this is a game of failure, of course. We always talk about that, and you're going to fail a lot. So it's hard to build confidence. But when you do, you're following little wins or little successes, whatever it may be. It could be defense that you can transfer into the offense.
Sure.
So it's got to be a little bit of something to ride that momentum.
No doubt.
Yeah.
That makes a big deal, is having those little wins. And I think when you're teaching, you want to have contests. You want to give them some goals when they're training, so that when they hit those goals, they're like, hey, I am building confidence. And you want to build real life scenarios, not just build the King Kong in the cage, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to say something that translates from the cage to the field, and that they feel like when they get out there that they can do it. So that's the hardest part, I think, of teaching, is getting the buy-in, getting them to understand that they are, they can hit. There's very few hitters that we see that we go, wow, maybe they're just so depleted of talent, or they're just so small at a higher, like maybe they're small for their age and they're just going to struggle for a little while. But they can build some fundamentals. They can build their strength. They can do things. So you have to get them to buy in. Hey, this is temporary. This is something that if you really work hard and you really want this might take a little bit more time. But also, there might be a period of time in the near future where you escalate your rate of improvement, because you have really taken the fundamentals to heart, and you now have a fundamentally sound approach when you're hitting. And now you've built this, the strength and some of the progressive movements, the sequential movements that we alluded to earlier. So we talk a lot about intensity and focus and being ready to hit and things like that, and then discipline. What does a disciplined hitter mean to you?
On the field, right?
Yeah.
Not swinging at balls and strikes. If you break everything down, like, you want to swing at strikes as a hitter, that's the most important part.
Right.
Like, when you're mentally going into an at-bat, if you swing at balls, you're just creating a harder chance for yourself to get hits.
Right.
So
it's good that you said on the field, because in the cage, it doesn't mean anything if you can't translate it. So I'm glad you made that difference, like discipline on the field. You don't want to lose any discipline that you've maybe learned or gained in the cage and just completely leave it in the cage.
That can be a vicious cycle. Having discipline in the cage and not having it on the field, back and forth.
We see that a lot.
You do. It's tough to make that jump over, because some players don't even realize they're not doing it.
Right.
They just think like, wow, I keep I'm not doing the things I'm doing in the cage. Like you said, how do I transfer over and get that confidence and the discipline on the field?
Right.
There's a switch. Yeah.
So we also like to point out hitters to kids that are vastly different hitters. Roberto Clemente was a front foot hitter, and he's one of the greatest hitters of all time. Babe
Mm-hmm.
Ruth was very different from, Ken Griffey Jr., Mickey Mantle, like some great hitters, very different styles. Name 2 hitters that you think are vastly different in today's game, but are both elite hitters.
Aaron Judge and Jose Altuve.
Great examples. You
I
got
came
one.
prepared with those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
got
didn't
one
come up with
that.
those off the spot, but I
Yeah,
was thinking about them.
we got one that's 6'7", 280. He does
It's
that coil and that stretch.
like a hovering with the foot.
Yep.
If you're watching me hover,
Yep.
it lands at the right time.
Yeah, they call it the one-legged swing, which again, coach speak. Tell that to a 9-year-old, and they're like, "I hit with one leg. What does that mean?" But he hits very differently from Jose Altuve, who's off the plate, even though he's like 5'5", 5'6".
A lot of movement.
A lot of movement with the hands, and kind of dives into the pitch, and then does that scissor swing where his back leg moves back. So
Yeah.
very, very different. But again, fundamentally, they're still very sound hitters. So we like to mention that to hitters who they remind us of. It's always good to give a hitter, hey, you remind us of maybe some major leaguer, so they could say, okay, so maybe my style is not so unorthodox,
Definitely.
So thank you for joining us for this episode of All Things Baseball Podcast. Had a lot of fun talking about youth hitting, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thank you.